I'll call anyone.
I did tell her I'm going to be in that room myself.
Sure, that's your subsequent reasons for staying up in this corner of the room are. Yeah, sorry, earlier important. Clothing proposition.
Yeah, because you have a very fancy phone.
I know, it makes phone calls.
No, we're off. This is actually the phone call which holds the record. Phone holds the record for longest phone call in the world made ever.
Also, we should check if the calls made recently.
He was playing Flappy Bird alone in a room. Oh yeah. She'll be in around soon. We need more coke.
Okay, what do you need? Because we need it.
All I could.
You need a heart.
You need a heart.
Quite a power.
I mean,
he had thoughts in the debate, but he wasn't very forthcoming.
By the way, Michael got cancelled the other day.
Michael wanted to cancel it. Sure, no.
I really don't want to either.
It's like there's nobody ever tells
Did you find your phone and your phone? No, I have a charger. Yeah, but that'll be dealt with after this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Lund won every award that's coming to side job.
I call it
Yes.
Yes, Will. Interesting. Okay. Begin. Welcome everyone to the Novice final of the Lund IB/Open 2014. In first proposition, we have Somalian roulette. Woo! In first opposition, Hannah Montana does African Savannah. In second proposition, Moin Moin. And in second opposition, Genesis. The motion is this House would prefer to live in a world with guaranteed median economic standards, one with the possibility of riches or poverty. Everything will be as it usually is. Everyone in the audience, if I understand that you want to cheer, but make sure you don't cheer so loudly you can't hear what the smart points of cheering are. Are there any questions? Great, then without further ado, I call on the Prime Minister to introduce it stands in their name. Oh, I should check. This is being live streamed. Everyone chill with that? Great.
I would have been helped by my hand in the shop for like 2 6 7 8. I can't just
put that.
Yeah.
Before us, we have two models, two ways to live in a society. And we would just firstly like to define these two models, and then throughout this debate, we'll have a comparative analysis of how this will change the life of the people in this society. I think the burden of proof for us is to prove that you will have a better life yourself and for most people in the society, in a society where you have more equality. So the model for the more equal system is where you have a pretty functioning welfare system, where you have no gaps in society, although you could get some rewards if you work hard, so there could still be some incentives. On the other hand, the other model with more rich and poor, we think you will have high class divisions. You will have no real functioning welfare system that covers everything such as healthcare and university education, however some basic things. And pretty much maximization of economic freedom, because that's the main objective with that system. Today I have three main substantives. Firstly, I'll prove how our system, the one with more equality, will have equal opportunities for everyone. Secondly, I will prove how this will create a more democratic state with a more functioning democracy. And thirdly, how the corporal influence will be limited through our system. So beginning with equal opportunities. in a capitalist society with a lot of economic freedom, sure, you say that you're born equal, but you're not really born equal. We think this is something that's very problematic, and we think it's better to have a system where you're actually born equal, where you have equal opportunities. And how will this be guaranteed? So if you have a system where everyone has the same opportunities, monetary opportunities, then it won't be, the birth lottery won't play as big of a role. So if you're born in a family with a lot of social contact, with a lot of money, you won't just simply be able to buy yourself into Harvard and then just go into and get like a higher position. Instead, everyone will have that opportunity, and it won't be that some people who are born into privileges will have more opportunities than others. So instead of having some people who are very privileged, you will have that everyone will have the same privileges and everyone will have the same opportunities to do whatever they want to do.
That's a lot of information.
So what we think this will create is a society where everyone, the ones who were poor before, they will instead be able to do whatever they want. They will be able to pursue the university educations, and everyone will have the opportunity to actually prosper. I think there is no such functioning mechanism in a very free, liberal, capitalist society, because for the reason that if you're born poor, you're stuck in the poverty trap. You won't really be able to get out of that trap, and a lot of the families won't ever be able to do anything, even if their like sons are really, really smart, and there are like some few scholarships. I don't think that's enough. We think it's more fair if everyone has the opportunity to get these university educations and such things. No, thank you. Oh yeah, sure. It's clarification.
So, are you, under your system, still allowing some inequalities to get that straight, or will total inequality be enforced?
Well, it's not. Well, it's mainly total equality. However, you will get some minor benefits if you actually work very hard. But it's not like you will be a millionaire. You will have like 25 yachts. Instead, maybe you will have like a little bit better car, or maybe you will have like a better bed or something. If that clarifies. No, thank you. So moving on to my second substantive about democracy, one of the fundamental values in our society. So in a society with very large gaps, and we live in a society where we say that money equals power, then if you have a lot of money, you will obviously have a lot of power. And that is something that's very apparent in states where you have very large gaps in society. We have, for example, US, where if you are born in a very rich family, and it's mainly rich families that get into these presidential jobs or jobs in Congress or other high-end positions. We think this is something that's not fair for democracy, for the reason that everyone should have the opportunity to advance the society and become leaders. And we don't think that the democracy itself is so democratic if there's the 1% that controls pretty much everything, if there's 1% that governs and has all the top positions. I think that's not a very democratic system. I think the 1% isn't the democracy. The democracy is supposed to be the people's rule. I don't think the people are the 1%. The 1% is the majority. So therefore, we won't really have a democratic state if we have very large gaps in society. We have examples for like Rupert Murdoch buying up a lot of media because he has money, and he can control society because he can control everything that's put into the people's minds. I think this is something that's detrimental to democracy, and want to create a really free democratic state where you'll have decisions that benefit the people instead of decisions that benefit the 1%. You won't have states that just deny global warming like Australia because you force the people to believe that, because everything that's in the media is said to just go against global warming. I think such states won't exist in our system. No, thank you. Thirdly, moving into corporal influence. How is it different in our system? So we believe in a system where you have some sort of corporations, however, not massive income gaps. But we think that in a system where everyone has some sort of equality and there are people who are very poor and vulnerable, I think in such a system, the big corporations won't be able to discriminate against the poor people who don't have the same access to, for example, lawyers or other things so they can defend themselves. So in the system we will have a system where the corporal's influences over poor people and the ones who are maybe born worse off it won't be the same. You won't have, for example, large private healthcare or like elderly care corporations like Carema that just discriminate against people who don't have like any opportunity to do anything, and they can't sue them or anything because they simply don't have the economic means to get a lawyer and go through court cases. So I think in our system, you will have a system where it will be less corporate interest, which will lead to less suffering for the poor people, and will create a more overall equal society, which will make sure it's more prosperous and more fair. So what do we prove today? Firstly, you have a more democratic state, which will grant more fair decisions that benefit everyone. Secondly, you will have equal opportunities, which will guarantee that everyone will have a fair chance in life, and the corporate influence will be limited, so you can't have these fiascos where you have massive healthcare systems that are private and just abuses people. For these reasons, we proudly propose.
I'd like to thank that speaker for their fine speech and call on the Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, on a pragmatic or philosophical level, it is not too controversial to claim that few things are guaranteed in this world. And we live in a Western social democracy that has prioritized civil and political rights over economic and social rights, while showing us that those economic and social rights can still be achieved under a system that prioritizes human dignity. And we believe that it was very convenient of the opening government to come up with this ideal model without actually articulating the harms, the particulars, the trade-offs that would have to be made, while focusing on a real world where these trade-offs have already been made, where we do see some detriment happening, but where we furthermore find that human creativity has given us various examples of where such detriment can be mitigated, where we can achieve a much more ideal system without denying human freedom. And with that in mind, I have some points of rebuttal. Firstly, he had this idea that the system is inherently unequal because some people are born into privilege. As we will show throughout our case, different forms of privilege, not necessarily articulated by monetary accountability, will nonetheless arise. And this is inevitable under any kind of system because of the contingency of like where and how you're born simply. But firstly, we believe that we can provide various examples of where these privileges are not particularly high. And it is incumbent upon us to point to these examples and not to take capitalism, like modern capitalism, as its own game, because this is not necessarily the other alternative. When we find various other examples, like Swedish social democracy, which have in fact been very successful, and if we did in fact come up with a hypothetical world like this debate asks us to do, we'd probably be much more likely to come up with. We believe furthermore that the various analysis that the opposition has presented shows that they do not understand that people are not just born into privilege, but they're also born into diversity, which is by and large a condition that frames human existence. Because he believes that by bringing into place economic equality, you could solve every one of the world's problems. You could solve climate denial, you can solve like all sorts of undesirable lifestyles, and he fails to understand that this kind of diversity emerges simply because humans are born with tendencies to be similar, but also to differ in various ways, to try to be unique and to come up with their own perspectives and interactions with the world. And this leads on to my next point of rebuttal, which is the fact that he articulated that somehow that inequalities would arise, but they would just be quite small if people worked very, very hard. Well, we believe this sort of suggests a very artificial system full of arbitrariness, but also one that would have to be policed and coerced to a very great extent to ensure that these inequalities remain small. I'll get to that in my substantial. Furthermore, he points towards examples where like the 1% take over democracy and discriminate over poor people and so on. We believe that this is not necessarily the case. We believe that this is due to like various historical contingencies where economic inequality has become mixed with social inequality. We believe that like current economic inequalities don't necessarily have to give away the benefits that they would accrue under our case, while also having these detriments that are more seen in examples such as America than in various European countries, especially the Nordic and Scandinavian countries. And we believe that it is much better to create a system that discriminates towards poor people, that looks at areas where inequality might arise, and looks at the particular situations of these, rather than articulating all inequality as being equal, as arising from the same set of circumstances. Now onto my substantial. Firstly, we would like to draw the benefits of social democracy. Now, the social democracy does incorporate capitalism, yes, but it presents a marriage between capitalism, between different articulations of wealth, and between social relations. And this creates a lot of the benefits that I've hinted at in my rebuttal, which are that human diversity, where it creates certain inequalities, can be addressed and articulated in that manner, which is to say that we are not denying people the right to be different simply because it gives them a better quality of life. We are saying that you can live this quality of life as long as it does not engender a social system where others are disadvantaged. And under the current system, that is a very difficult job. Yes, because we live in a very large and diverse world where people have to draw out examples where inequalities are emerging. We will have to ask the redistributive state to address these inequalities. However, this is a system where people's diversity can much more be celebrated and harmonized than a system that just assumes that everyone is the same, that just assumes that everyone would accept the minimal gains that would be achieved under creating yes, I'll take it.
So you think that your social rights and your opportunities are not connected to your economical standards of living and opportunities at all?
Well, thank you. Of course they are, which is why I'm articulating a system called a social democracy, not just a particular form of capitalism. Well, starting off with a set of organic values that the community brings to the table. You have to understand that capitalism should be used not as an end, but as a tool to achieve these, which is why we would always mobilize money to achieving particular social outcomes. I'll take you later. Now onto my second point of substantial, which is that this creates room for innovation, and this innovation includes social and technological innovation that we believe would not have been possible in this day and age. We believe that the Industrial Revolution would not have come about if we had simply tried to enforce a system where everyone is equal, where everyone has equal economic wealth. So the way this comes about is through the mobilization of mass resources that comes about when you have a lot of people who do have wealth and who are interested in using that wealth for the benefit of various different groups and for investing in particular technologies and innovations, and it would spread that in a much more innovative way than the government. And it also comes to the idea of wealth as an incentive, that if you create innovations that can give you substantial personal benefits and can make not only your society better, but can mean that you're recognized as a person who contributes essentially to that society and accrue the benefits. And now to my final point of substantial, which my next speaker will also articulate, which is this requires mass coercive measures. Firstly, legal and state-run, simply because it is inevitable under any circumstances that some inequalities would arise. They never articulate to us how these inequalities would be policed. That is because they're afraid to talk about a state where they have been policed, which is clearly the Soviet Union, the greatest example of state communism in the 20th century, which has caused great amounts of disharmony, death, and just didn't work as a system to guarantee social equality. And furthermore, it required forms of social coercion that my deputy will articulate. So having said all these things, we're deciding in this debate that is much more willing to make the trade-offs that would result in greater human welfare and understand the whole the conceptual whole of the social system. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the speakers for their fine speech and for the Deputy Prime Minister.
So before I go into my substantive, I would like to address some points brought up by the proposition here. So he talked a lot about this sort of incentive or this sort of drive to create something new for the people. But what sort of drives that drive? It's not just monetary incentive, and it's not just a monetary means in that example. We believe that people are a lot more complex than just adding economic freedom and just adding rich and the potential to become rich and poor is going to drive people to greatness. We believe that people are in some way or shape or form driven by the sort of people around them, and that this will drive them to create greatness. And he talked also about, he addressed the problem here about the sort of that this is a values debate rather than the sort of practical one. We're sort of in a social democracy and in a more equal society in there. We see the value of economic freedom being put down in relation to the value of a medium sort of income, which is what we are debating today. A sort of a marginal income for everyone. So that is the sort of values debate we're supposed to have today. And just putting everything in a practical perspective is not really what is the situation here.
Clarification?
Yes.
When you say everyone, who do you mean? Even students and like how old people, how young and such?
What do you mean everyone? Yes.
Okay, for instance, like a student, should he have like a good income while he's studying?
Yes, we believe that that's a situation where everyone is guaranteed a medium level of economic standard, no matter what walks of life they are in. So, onto this sort of where he talked about the potential of people to actualize their situation and the potential for people to create utility for the through the use of capital and those means. We believe that there is potential in everyone, and there is potential in all walks and all social classes. We believe that you're not defined, you're not smarter just because you're born rich. We believe that in our system, we actualize more people's potential because we're giving more people, on average, the opportunity by giving these people and more people from more walks of life and from more creeds and from more social classes the potential to actualize their dreams. We believe that's a trade-off we're willing to give than someone's yacht or someone's other house. So that's the sort of trade-off. We believe that that will actualize more people's potential and drive more people to do good things in society rather than just allow these rich people to continue on the accumulation of wealth and the accumulation of their social status to their children. Because we believe that we actualize more people from different social classes. No, thank you. So, onto my main argument, is about the unification of society and how this will make everyone happy. So, we believe that one of the largest sort of barriers between social classes and barriers between society, and that drives us apart, is income and class. So, we believe that a more stable level and less dividers in this situation, then the rich people can't empathize with the poor people because they haven't seen them. They haven't actually been in their shoes. And we believe that when capital has such a strong influence in society, the ruling class becomes disconnected with the rest of society, and the weaker classes and the middle class also becomes disconnected in that situation, where democracy is hijacked by these people. And we believe that you shouldn't be defined by where you are born or who you are born from. We believe that you should be defined because you are a person and because you are because everyone is created equal. We believe in that principle and that everyone's sort of dignity should be preserved in that situation. And we believe that when you have a more similar societal structure, and we believe that when you come from more similar backgrounds, then people will become more empathetic with each other because they will understand these sort of situations which everyone comes from, and they will understand that we're doing this for the good of society rather than for the good of yourself. And we believe that in that situation there will be a more homogeneous society and a society with more understanding and empathy for others because of these similar life choices and because of these similar life values. So in that situation, we believe we've created more unification of society and less competition. So we believe in this sort of idea of competition between individuals is not necessarily a good thing. We believe that individuals achieve the most when they work together as a society for the common good, rather than profit maximization. We believe that when we see profit maximization actually being realized, it is not for the good of the society and not for the good of the people. We believe that that's actually creating a detrimental effect both to the environment and for the poor people, because they oftentimes are in a poor spiral and don't have equal opportunity, as my first speaker pointed out. So in that situation, the accumulation of capital and the competition coupled with that creates a more unequal society and a less homogeneous society. So in that situation, we believe that is also bad. So no, thank you. So we also believe that this will lead to a higher average quality of life for these people. And we believe after a certain point, the accumulation of wealth only has a marginal benefit for these people, but they will still not see that it's only a marginal benefit. But while the poor people will see the actualization of that wealth being a large benefit for them. So we believe that, yes.
Okay, so just a quick example. Do you believe a 12-year-old with a paperwork should earn approximately the same as a 35-year-old man in some of his career?
No, I mean, when I answered the question about studying, I meant in higher education. I don't mean a 12-year-old, for example. I believe that they're still supposed to be in some way or shape or form linked to their parents or something like that. So I don't think that POI is relevant. So back to my argument. So we believe that the rich people will only have marginal benefit of the actual wealth they have. And we believe that this wealth is better to be distributed from the people because this will lead to a better society. And this will lead to a better average wealth of the people and a better life standard for these people. And we believe that if you're plopped into a world, if you're either rich or poor, or you're just randomly put into the world, then that birth lottery is coming into play. And even if you are born as a rich person, you will not be connected to so many people, and you will be defined by your creed. And we believe in a society where you're connected to more people and defined by what you do is better than a society which you are defined by who you are and how you are born. So in that situation, we believe in a more equal society because people will be defined more of what they do and how they work with people. And in that situation, we also believe that there will be a higher average happiness for these people. So what have we showed you today? We have shown you that this will lead to higher average happiness of people and higher average quality of life through the distribution of wealth. We believe that this will lead to higher unification of society. We have shown you that this will lead to unequal opportunities, and equal opportunities benefit society more than unequal opportunity, and that drives creativity more. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank the speaker for their fine speech and call on the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, if this debate has been plagued by a certain vagueness so far, we believe that this is entirely the fault of open government, who have basically not really given us a substantial model, but have simply given us a caricature of two extremes. One sort of dystopian, futuristic nightmare where corporations control everything, no one has equal opportunities, and extreme inequality exists at every level. And the other one, this paradise where everyone's completely equal. None of these problems exist somehow. We've not been shown like how this would be achieved in the slightest, of taxation, of enforcement through some other means. And yet, again, where we heard this vague statement that some inequalities would still be allowed. And now this is like one of the very first problems, but a very like principal one with their case. They say some inequalities will still be allowed. They don't show how these inequalities will be stopped from snowballing like they do in certain capitalist systems already, the problems of which they've outlined. Once someone gets certain amounts of wealth, how will this stop him from then inheriting it to his children, using it to accrue more wealth, etc., etc., etc. Like it has not been shown how this will ensue. So what we say, and the most important thing I want you to gather from my colleague's speech is that our system, one that extols the virtues of social democracies like Sweden, but also other countries in Europe, is the actual real, no thank you, is the actual real and nuanced middle ground between these two extremes. Yes, inequalities are possible in this system, but rather than some vague statement about some inequalities will be allowed somehow, no thank you, some inequalities will be allowed somehow. This system clearly defines how inequalities will be allowed. It restricts the very negative effects of capitalism. So you know, a lot of the things. No, thank you. A lot of things like extreme corporate control, extreme like poverty and lack of opportunity don't exist in these systems. Don't exist in Sweden. You can't claim that in Sweden, for instance, we live in this extreme dystopian nightmare where no one has any opportunities. Please. You simply cannot make this claim. No, thank you. I'll take your points later. So our system is the appropriate middle ground, where yes, quite a bit of inequality is still allowed. The negative effects they talk about are not inevitable; they are restricted. and it's not plagued by this vagueness, and it is a realistic system.
Sir.
No, thank you. Now, why do we think the system is better? Here are some of the advantages of capitalism, already outlined by my colleague. We're talking about a free market. We do not live in a system of like free markets for fun. We do so because it's the most efficient system. Goods are allocated to the most profitable, the most valuable like sources through not like some system of central planning, but by some like central power, but through the collective sort of minds of everyone coming together and creating the system. This also creates incentives for people to work. They talk about how in their system people will be motivated by other people, but in our system this also happens in addition to the incentives provided by capitalism. And in our system, rich individuals, as has been the case throughout history, will still be able to finance innovation, to finance all these positive things that we've seen throughout the history of capitalism. Innovation has come from large sources of capital being invested. To start any company, you need large amounts of capital to start with. Okay, now let me illustrate some of the problems of feasibility and the problems like with sort of moral principle in their argument that have also already been alluded to by my colleague. First of all, we've said although it is very vague, in some way or another, their system will require large amounts of state coercion. Now already, we believe in principle this goes against personal liberty, which is one of the cornerstones of the system we live in, liberal democracies. Go on.
A social democracy does not maximize economic freedom, so you're missing the point. You're not talking about the model that you set out to have.
I'm not sure that I understand your point. Your system restricts economic freedom completely, so I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that point of information. Now,
Point of information.
no, thank you. Let's talk about the lack of feasibility, the disadvantages of their suggestions in practice. Nozick tells us that you can start from any kind of equal system you want, but through the natural inequalities that exist between people are not equal, some are more talented, etc., inequalities will arise. So again, constant policing of equality would be required. Again, wrong in principle, also not feasible in practice, because would require a huge allocation of resources to achieve this. And this leads me to another point. No, thank you. That even like under a system like they propose, inequality and all the things they talk about really would still exist. They've not shown this connection between lack of opportunities, etc., and like the inequalities that often exist between people. In a system like this, you will still have talented individuals, charismatic individuals, and instead of like money deciding certain inequalities, social standing and similar aspects will still influence where you are in society. We've seen this in real life in systems like the Soviet Union. Sure, the Soviet Union is not inevitably a system that they're talking about, but we've seen, yes, this was a system, also communist China, where wealth inequalities were restricted, but we saw that charismatic individuals still rose to the top, still benefited, and in fact, in some cases, even more so, because they were able to acquire these positions of extreme authority.
Point of information.
No, thank you. So once again, like we believe that the government is trapped between kind of a rock and a hard place, because either they allow these inequalities and then the very thing they're trying to achieve with their system doesn't really work, or they police them even further, and then their system would really veer into like total absurdity and the actual dystopian nightmare that we're talking about. It would involve like a constant coercion and policing of these brilliant minds who naturally, through their charisma, through their intelligence, rise to the top in any system. Even if you magically just take money out of the equation, that would still exist. So then they would be coercing like the most brilliant kind of minds in our society who've always been responsible for innovation, etc., etc., etc. How much time do I have left?
15 seconds.
Good. So because of what I've outlined, because a social democracy is a system which combines the benefits of a free market with like allocating goods, allowing innovation, with like a sort of realistic system of how like certain like extreme inequalities are restricted, and because their system would involve unfeasible and unacceptable amounts of coercion and enforcement, and would involve and would most likely still permit inequalities, to a large degree, we are happy to oppose.
I'd like to thank that speaker for the fine speech and everyone for a great top half, and call on the member for the
There's not much space here. Anyways. Sorry. Okay. No, we heard it. Thank you very much for the floor, Mr. and Mrs. Speaker. Thank you for the fine speeches so far. I am going to start my speech with a rebuttal. The rest will be included in my arguments. Then I will clarify some things that have been misunderstood or not been probably not been told clearly yet. And then I'm going to come to my the points I'm going to clarify in my speech, which is why is this gap morally wrong? Why should we change this gap? And why would closing this gap lead to a better world and a better society in general? We know that there will still be certain inequalities in the world we have, in the world we want to live, actually, from this government. But we know that we will probably never achieve a perfect world, but we want to achieve a better world. You're coming back to Sweden and the Soviet Union. I think the motion reads the world, and if we take the global level into account, there are clearly inequalities that are not covered, especially on the southern and eastern parts of our world. You say the free market is the most effective system we can possibly have, but it is based on the assumption that humans are rational beings, and that the invisible hand, and that having a free market will lead to the best possible outcome for society, which has been proven a wrong assumption. I don't know if you have ever heard about the financial crisis we've been in so far. Then no. Then there is a point of innovation. Think about if we would enable every person to seek the education they want and can, and enable them to have the life they want, what kind of great minds we could have, and what kind of innovation would come from places like Africa, where people I don't have the chance at the moment, sorry, to reach the full talent, because the development of your talent is definitely directly connected to your economic standard of living and to your income. So we think that you also said no, that freedom is one of our principles and the freedom of choice we live by, but we also have a thing that is called the human rights, and human rights mean that everyone has the right to live, which is not guaranteed under the system we are living right now, and we think that this right is more important than the one of one individual to only 25 years, as you say that so far. Yes, please.
What is your moral standpoint on unemployment and the benefits they should receive?
We said we have a guaranteed income for everyone. Does that answer the question? So why is there the gap we have morally wrong? We're talking about the income gap and not basically the social gap, which is although directly connected, because the social rights and opportunities are connected to the income you have. And the gap we have is now wrong because it is based on historical wrongdoing, such as colonialism, exploitation, by especially Western countries, such as Europe and the US. We would condemn these actions, such as slavery and the exploitation of African countries right now. So, yes, because they're wrong, they're morally wrong. We know it is wrong to exploit people and use everything they have to our advantage. And this is still happening, and that is mainly to the capitalistic system, which I will come back later on in my time. It is based on exploitation. Yes, please.
So, would you rather see the historical wrongs remediated by a centrally planned government who thinks that it knows what's best for everyone, or by giving people the freedom to choose what a better world looks like, which is what's happening under our model?
We think that a world where everyone is provided a basic income, which will lead to the cover of their basic needs, such as food, housing, shelter, education, is definitely an achievable goal and a status that we should all work for to achieve. So let me come back to exploitation on the individual, and it is happening on the individual and global level. We all know they're really cheap shirts at H&M. We have them really cheap because they're poor workers in Bangladesh, and the reason we can exploit them are these is the huge gap between our standards, and because we abuse them in the history of our world, and we still keep abusing them. And one reason that is possible is this huge gap in income. If the people in Bangladesh too had a basic income covered, they wouldn't need to work for 12 cents an hour, so the H&M shirt does cost €2 instead of the probably 200 it should.
Clarification?
No. I already, yes, sorry.
Point of clarification.
No. The system we have, as I already mentioned, is wrong. We have this gap between poor and riches because we have a system that is based on colonialism, racism, exploitation. And yes, now I come to why we should change this. Because we as you said, we live in a world where we have basic values and rights that everyone should respect and that we agreed upon, such as the human rights and the Millennium Goals. And if we cover these human rights, if we actually enable every person to live the life they should be able to live, and not just starve because they unluckily have been born in Africa or Asia in certain parts of them. Nope. We should actually create a society where you can, thanks to an equal economic income and an more equal economy, where everyone has the same chances, opportunities, and resources, we will achieve these goals. We would achieve the fulfillment of human rights all over the world, because people wouldn't have to starve just because they're on the wrong side and in the wrong place. And as you said, we're not saying that competition in itself is bad, and as the government explained, there will be still room for a certain reasonable amount and sustainable amount of competition. And we do not want a communist system where everyone is just forced to do as the government tells them. We just want to enable people. We want to achieve the complete opposite. We want to achieve a world that is just, fair, and equal. Because people, that is what we're all struggling for. We're struggling for safety. We're struggling to live. We struggle for happiness. And this is all comes back to what you have, to your resources. This is all in one way or the other connected to if you have food every day, if you have shelter, if you have medication, if you have education. And that's why we want this basic income to provide for everyone. Because if people are happier, if they have they can focus their productivity on other things like innovation, education, like the community, and create a better world together. So that is why why this government would like to live in such a world instead of the one we have right now. Thank you very much.
Let's find that speakers may find peace and call on the member of opposition.
You anyone? Okay, let's go. Okay, so today in closing opposition, we are going to talk about some of the things that has been vastly untouched upon so far by the opening half of the debate, but of course also mention a bit about what has already been said, the clash that has already been. We personally have three main areas and points we're going to focus on. One is the depth of humanity, humankind, we can say, and the pragmatics, and then the morality. But first of all, I'm going to mention a bit what has been said so far. What we just heard from closing government was, for instance, examples that you need to be rich in order to fulfill your talent. Well, that is like an obvious fallacy. We see that time and time again, especially with sports and stuff. Like people they don't need to be rich in order to be that. If they have a good enough talent, they can succeed. So that is completely false. And what really shocked me was the moral standpoint, which is one of our key points, about the unemployment. Because if they honestly believe that it should be just as viable not having a job as having a job, we do not see how the world is going to work at all, like in any sense of the word. And also what we heard from the top half, not right now, that students, they should also have the same. I am a student right now, and I have the time of my life, really. But the only reason I wouldn't want to be a student anymore is because I earn next to no money, and I would like to go out, have a job to earn more. But if I had a good income as a student, I'll be a student for life. I will go out drinking, partying, do whatever I like the whole time. So there's a vast moral problem with this, which will turn into pragmatic issues, which is also one of our key points. But to finish the morality, we think there's a general sense of unfairness, because yeah, equality, that's good and all, but you're only seeing equality on one parameter, and that is income level. That, like humans, they are a vast size. There are so many different sides to everyone that you cannot just take income level as the only thing to equal out. And from that, I'm going to go into the analysis of humankind. In a sense, it sounds a bit vast, but I'll try to keep it short. So each humans, we have different values. That is shown time and time again throughout history, throughout countries, societies, and so forth, through different individuals. That is exactly why we see people going down to Africa as foreign aid workers, working for no money at all, because they want to make a difference, and materialism is not important for them. I personally been working abroad, earning almost no money, but I like to travel. That's what gives me pleasure, and I derive pleasure from that. And therefore, you cannot just say that this is good for everyone. And another thing is the identity. And many, like, the job is important. Therefore, we do not want to devaluate the importance of a job, because a job gives you a sense of identity and incentive in a lot of different ways, which obviously benefits the individual and society as a whole, regarding taxes, financially, and so forth. And again, that's not to mention it too much, but there are differences in humankind. Some people are assertive, some are submissive, and so forth. You talk about collaboration, yes. And almost all collaboration, there need to be a leader and someone who aren't a leader. There are a certain inequality because people want inequality. They don't want to be equal. There might be a very small percentage, after all, who want complete equality, but the world now. I can promise you, not everyone wants this kind of values. And now to, yes, I'll take.
Yeah, what kind of values are you talking about? It's very
family, for instance. Okay, yeah, let's take. I'm talking about the value of family, for instance. That's just example. Because if we all earn the same, obviously a bachelor who just living single, he's going to be richer than someone who got 4 kids. But that is important for them, because that's what they want. Because you cannot take into account the different expenses people will have, and if you do, it will become even more arbitrary. Because then people with addictions, they should earn more in order to have the same chance of the same living standards as other people. So obviously you cannot take that into consideration, meaning that that even though you're going to have the same income, the living standard is going to be completely different from person to person, whether it be addiction, family, different values. If you want an expensive car, then perhaps you cannot afford an expensive house. You still got the free choice, and also like what kind of food you want to eat, and a lot of examples. Okay, sorry, I just lost. But yeah, there are of course many stakeholders in this. We think the most important one is the individual, because the individual, they should have the right to follow the dreams, the goals, the values they have, and so forth, and they in many cases benefit the society as a whole. This is something that has not been touched upon at all by opening half of the government sense. And of course there are the financial assets that, and again, to tie it into what we said before about morality, if it was completely equal for everyone, well then a lot of people would probably want to be like an artist or something, because they can just sit there home being creative, writing their book that's never going to be published, but they're still getting the same salary as someone working maybe 50 hours a week. Yes.
So if you're stuck in a poverty cycle, you're not able to actualize your actual dreams and ideals.
Of course
so if
you are
different.
Because you grossly underestimate the ability of humans. I've mentioned football before. I know that is a tiny example, but so many people come from the slum of Brazil and they become millionaires, and that's because they have a talent that they use. Also, students, they are poor as, okay, I don't want to break equity, but they have the potential to go and aspire and be like the greatest of society if they choose to, if they want to, because again, not everybody wants that. Some people want to work as little as possible to have time for other things, for their interest and family and other relationships. which was we want to agree with opening up there that the incentive definitely goes completely out of hand for a lot of different things, and also the like when we look at which people are being a philanthropist, there are so many things in society that we would miss out on if everyone was just completely equal, because then you do not want to be a curve breaker. For instance, let's take school. Like, do you work to do good, to be better in a sense? You don't. But if everyone is completely equal, people who are curve breakers, who are better in a sense, they're going to be stigmatized because, oh, now they're making the others look bad. But that's a part of human nature. We don't just want to be good. Many of us want to be better. And that's of course different sides to that. You can be better dad, you can be a better CEO, something like that. So we're saying that the humankind is such a vast thing that you cannot just say, oh, if you all earn the exact same money, you're gonna have a perfect world. We believe that is completely wrong. And as just to tie it in, the reason we believe it's wrong is because of the pragmatics issue. It's never going to work, and it's going to lose incentive. And morality, we think, it is completely immoral to have that point of view. And of course, again, the depth of humanity. There are so many aspects to this that you have to consider. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank that speaker for their fine speech and go on the proposition yet.
It's gonna blow.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Misters and Madam Chair, I'm going to read out the motion of that we're discussing today. It's called "This House would prefer to live in a world with a guaranteed medium income or medium economic standard compared to one with a possibility of richness and poverty." We have seen a debate in which I think the main points of this, the main questions of this motion have not been addressed by the opposition, and we are going to show you why only we have grasped this motion correctly. Well, first I'm going to rebut now. First of kind of some questions that I think are really not part of this debate, but I think I should address them anyhow, just to clear them out. So we have talked about will our idea of providing a median economic standard, that means like we defined it as because of the slightly fluffy definition of the opening government as a minimum wage that everyone who works will get in order to fulfill their basic needs. We believe that in the current world system, and both in the world system and in the on the micro level, talents are not playing out because there are unequal opportunities in the world based on income, and that that meritocracy is actually not existent in this system, and I'm going to show you how our motion would actually mend this problem. Second question, no. The opposition has assumed that our model would make all people like same and similar, and would not allow them to pursue their strive for like being better than others. We've never said that it's not possible to compete against each other. We just want to make sure that everyone gets the same chances in order to compete in a way that will make it possible for them to really work out, show their talents, and play them out and benefit from them in the right way. We also talked about like how this like minimum income basically that would be the same all over the world would be like too much state coercion. Like really, how much is this? I'll take you in a second. How much is this coercion? How much isn't? Don't you think it's more like an empowerment for people? Why is this coercion if everyone can fulfill their human right to eat enough, to have a house, to have medical aid, to get education, because they can afford to send their children to work, send their children to school and not letting them work? Excuse me. Why is that so bad? Why is that coercion?
Yes, so as you just said,
Sorry.
as you just said, it's going to be the same all over the world. You do know that there's a vast difference in like in what it needs to like in the cost from country to country, right? So you're going to be a millionaire in Bangladesh, for instance, if you get the same as you do in Denmark.
Yes, that's one point that you completely got wrong out of this. We are going to establish how in each country on the current level of exchange rate, what kind of money, what kind of basic income you need, not basic income, but wage when you work. So when you work, you get the amount of money that you need to fulfill your basic income based on the worth of the currency that's actually in place. So that we're comparing countries with each other, yes, but I'll stop this here.
On that point, though.
No. Unemployment is not a question in this motion because we're talking about people who work and what people should earn when they're working, and that should fulfill their basic needs. No. Now I'm going to talk about the four big questions in this debate, and this is why is there inequality in the first place? The Open Government has said that inequality exists on the national level because of corporate control and because of different power relations based on unequal opportunities. They have talked about the national level more, but my partner showed you that the real problem and the motion is really about what we need to do in the world scale. So the Opening Government has talked about the birth lottery that we totally acknowledge, and we think the birth lottery is playing out even more on the international scale because we have global inequality based on historical invasions of countries. No.
On that point, though.
No. We've had colonialism, slavery, and racism, and according to our basic beliefs in human rights, we cannot allow for the continuation of this kind of slavery that has led us to that led us in the Western world to exploit, to be so rich. We want to stop this by ending the conditions for slavery that's still going on, for example, in Bangladesh, as my partner has pointed out. The next question is, why is inequality good or bad? We have showed you that exploitation of people is against human rights. Our world system should apply to human rights, and we want to make them work. Why is it important to close this gap? The Open Government has showed you that there is at the moment there is no democracy, that democracy isn't working, but we have showed you that that democracy is one thing, but human rights and the implementation of human rights and the right for every individual to pursue its happiness is the most important question in this case. So I want to conclude by saying that this motion would enable people to mend a flawed system of non-existent and impossible meritocracy in order to establish meritocracy so that competition would be fair and that people can fulfill their basic needs. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the speakers for their fine speech and call on the opposition whip.
Put the motion down somewhere. Ah, here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read the motion too. Given the choice, this House would prefer to live in a world with a guaranteed median economic standard rather than one with a possibility of richness and poverty. Now, I want to help side government understand the definition of median. Median does not mean minimum. In the status quo, which is the system that, to a certain extent, we're defending, we have a minimum wage. This is what we consider a wage, which is the minimum livable standard. But we also have the opportunity to earn more money, the opportunity to, dare I say, get rich. What side government had to prove today was the benefits of a median wage, the benefits of everyone in society getting exactly, or at least somewhere close to, an average wage, them all earning roughly the same amount. And in addition, I want to specify something that we found a little peculiar. In POIs, side government affirmed the fact that A, this median wage would apply to students, university students, and B, that this would apply to the unemployed. Now, the whip speaker unfortunately did not hear those two POIs or the answers to them, but I am going to operate on the basis of what was said by the constructive speakers in this debate. Sorry, that was mean, but great. Okay, so I also want to specify some things that we don't have to defend on our side. Some things that side government have been decrying and we don't necessarily have to argue for. We are not necessarily arguing for the 25 yachts that were mentioned on this side's team. We are not arguing for inequality. We are arguing for the possibility of inequality, a system in which this is possible. Because within this system, you get these ideas of a variety of opportunity and these ideas of economic incentive. But I have been bashing the opposition. I want to compliment them a bit as well. The opposition did do a great job of describing why a society with complete equality can have some serious benefits. The problem is they looked at this as from the point of view of a society with absolute equality, not just median income. As this side has specified, median income is only one facet of an identity and one facet of equality. If you want to get complete equality, you're going to have to take much more drastic steps. And that was the argument that the opening half of side government was trying to make when they ended up talking about Stalinism and communism. They're making the argument that if you want these benefits that side government is, that side government is proclaiming from this, you have to go much farther than this. And there are even more harms than the ones that I'm about to talk about us stating. So the harms that I want to talk about us stating that stand after this debate is through is the idea of variety and depth of humanity, and then the idea of economic incentive. I'm going to start off with the less important one, the idea of variety and depth of humanity. Now, this was... Sorry, they're all equally important. But this is the idea that there are differences in our society. There are differences in jobs. There are differences in people. There are differences in situations. If I'm an individual who has a family, a median income means something different for me than it does for, as my partner said, an unemployed person or someone who is a student. And so the reason that we support these differences is because people are given the choice to decide their status and to decide what job they want so that those can better mesh. Yes.
Wouldn't it still hold true that even with a minimum income, medium income, it would be necessary to fulfill your basic needs?
Sorry. Yes, a median income would be necessary to fulfill your basic needs, but the minimum wage already tries to do that, and we have that in our society, in a society which also has the possibility for poverty and for richness.
but this idea that there's differences in jobs and differences in people. I explained why the differences in people are important, but my partner also specified with the artist example as differences in jobs. I'm going to take another example, the idea of where I come from in Canada. You can work in the north assembling pipelines in below 40 degrees weather. You work 12 hours a day, and the pay is pretty sweet. And there's a reason for that, because it's so much harder than working in McDonald's. It's so much harder than being a student. That's why we have this diversity of income, because we reward people for working harder, or we reward people for the skills and their contribution to society, which takes me back to innovation. Incentive. And so what we see with this last point, is the idea that there's incredible incentives with the possibility of getting rich and getting poor. Now, side government, giving them credit again, they did do a good job of explaining why society already has some kind of social incentives that will continue on in a society where you don't have the economic incentives. But we on the side opposition have said that the economic incentives are so much greater and so much more important to society, that when you have economic incentives, sorry, not a lot of time. When you have economic incentives incentivizing individuals and corporations to go out and make a pipeline or make a road or to provide a meal because they benefit from that and you benefit from that. And yes, they become rich, but that is because they became rich by providing benefit to individuals. And you lose that incentive of becoming rich. When you lose that incentive of becoming rich, you lose that incentive of providing the benefit to individuals. You only have that social incentive. And we want more than that as an incentive to promote a better society. What we're trying to say is, look at those cars out there. Those cars exist because Henry Ford had the possibility of getting rich. Look at those lights up there. Those lights exist because Thomas Edison had the possibility of getting rich. Look at your phones. Facebook is probably open right there because Mark Zuckerberg had the possibility of getting rich. And we aren't defending richness and poorness and inequality, but we're defending that possibility of that happening as a way of promoting the diversity in society and incentivizing it to improve. Thank you.
I'd like to thank that speaker for their fine speech and everyone for a really enjoyable debate. It was an excellent atmosphere.